everyone and welcome to an interview with Mr. Rajesh Talwar. This is your host Ananya Sharma. The book in discussion today is From the Lips of the Goddess Mata Vaishno Devi, which has an e-book presence as well under the title The Presence of the Sacred Feminine. So Rajesh, can you tell us a bit about the book first?
Hi Ananya, it's good to be with you and your team once again. And today we are discussing something very close to my heart. Jai Mata Di. This is the book on Vaishno Devi, From the Lips of the Goddess Mata Vaishno Devi. As you mentioned, it also has an e-version, Mother in the Presence of the Sacred Feminine. I want to discuss the book today, but in a general context, a wider context. We had 2 episodes of Insights in which I spoke about the 5 strengths of Hinduism and the 2 weaknesses of Hinduism. Now today I think I can speak about the book, this book, and I can also speak simultaneously about one of the strengths of Hinduism, which is the importance given to the sacred feminine. And I think this is something where other religions can learn from Hinduism. There are things which Hinduism can learn from other religions as well. So I'm not claiming a monopoly on wisdom as far as Hinduism is concerned. But without meaning any disrespect to any of the other religions, I do honestly, with all sincerity, believe that this is something the other major religions of the world, they can learn from Hinduism, which is respect for the sacred feminine.
So Rajesh, would you say that there is no reverence for the sacred feminine in Islam and Christianity?
Thanks Ananya. I think comparatively speaking, Hinduism has great respect for the sacred feminine. Neither Islam nor Christianity have the same kind of reverence which we have in our religion, and this is something they can learn from us. For example, the Muslim will say praise be to Allah, and the Christian will say praise be to the Lord. They don't have a female equivalent of the divine, because the divinity cannot only be masculine. But I was speaking to a Christian from Liberia, we got into a discussion, and she said, oh, God is a man. I said, well, in India, God can be a man, God can be a woman, God can be a river. It's one divinity, but it can have many manifestations. So for example, I believe that Christianity would be much more enriched if they could say also, praise be to the goddess, which was there in the pre-Christian religions. And Islam also would be greatly enriched if they could say not only praise be to Allah, but praise be to Allah.
So you just said praise be to the Allah. Who and what is the Allah?
Ananya, a lot of people are under the mistaken impression that Allah came into existence with Islam. Actually, that is not true. Allah was an Arabic word which existed for hundreds of years. It meant God, but it existed for hundreds of years, thousands of years before Islam came into being. But along with Allah, in the pre-Islamic Arabic religion, there was also Allah. Allah was the female equivalent. So you had Allah for the male God, and you had Allah for the female equivalent, that is the goddess. But now, because the feminine, the sacred feminine has been crushed under Islam, we don't have Allah. There is no option. In India, I can say Jai Ram Ji Ki, but I can also say Jai Mata Ji. In the Christian religion, there is no option. In Islam, there is no option. So sacredness seems to be only very masculine as far as both these religions are concerned. In fact, there were lots of pre-Islamic goddesses in Saudi Arabia, in the Arab world. For example, you may not know this, but Shah Rukh Khan has called his flat Mannat. Now, Mannat in the common Indian language, we say that when we make a vow to a sacred site, or we ask for a favor, it derives from the Arabic meaning prayer. So, but Mannat was actually the name of a goddess in pre-Islamic Arabia. So there were many goddesses. Mannat was one of the very important goddesses. And people traveled for hundreds and hundreds of miles to pray at the feet of Mannat and ask for favors. So, but all these goddesses, they were, their worship was prohibited, their statues were destroyed, their temples were destroyed. And so the sacred feminine has been vigorously suppressed, not only by Islam, but also by Christianity.
So would you consider Islam and Christianity to be too masculine?
Yes, Ananya, there's no doubt about it. They're both very masculine religions. As I mentioned, the Christian from Liberia, the lady, she insisted God is a man. So God is a man in Christianity. Jesus is also a man. And so there is no space for a woman. God doesn't have a female companion. Jesus doesn't have a girlfriend. It's all very masculine centric. And if you see the leader of their religions, especially if you see the Catholic Church, the Pope has always been male. I believe, historically speaking, as a matter of just curiosity, once there was a female Pope, but that is because she was in disguise, she was pretending to be a man. So I think for 10-15 years in the Catholic Church you had a female Pope, but that was because she was pretending to be a man. But otherwise the Pope is always male. If you look at Iran, the Ayatollahs are all masculine. If you look at Islam, all the prophets are masculine. And they regard, of course, under Islam they consider Jesus also to be a prophet, and they consider Muhammad to be the last most important prophet. But Allah is definitely very masculine, as is God. And in Christian religion they talk about God, the Father, the Son and the Holy Ghost. So the Father is masculine, the Son is masculine. So it's an overly masculine religion, and actually if you think about it, the most beautiful sacred qualities are there with the woman. The woman has more compassion, the woman has more love, the woman is more caring. These are things which we can consider to be part of sacredness. The man is like a soldier, he is like going and fighting wars. So by excluding women, when I talk about the destruction of the sacred feminine in Arabia, I have to also speak of the destruction of the sacred feminine in Europe. Europe had hundreds of thousands of temples which were there, for the pre-Christian Greek and Roman gods and goddesses. So there were many temples in favor of, Juno, Venus, Aphrodite. The Greek goddesses were there, the Roman goddesses were there. Of course, the Roman gods and Greek gods were there also. Now, many of these temples, the goddess temples were destroyed and they were replaced by churches. So they were beautiful, places for people to go and pray. They were destroyed, and a church was built in that stead. If you look at the Wikipedia entry, Wikipedia has one entry which it talks about pre-Christian sites which were forcibly converted into Christianity, places where Christians could worship. They also have a similar entry about pre-Islamic sites which were forcibly converted into Islamic sites. So this has been happening all over the world, and I think one of the weaknesses of these two religions when compared to, for example, a religion like Hinduism is that because Christianity and Islam were overly masculine, they were also overly aggressive. They didn't have the tolerance which the woman has, respect for other people, other people's set of beliefs. It was very masculine. My way is the right way. You have to follow. You have to convert. Now, if you see that Hinduism is the only global religion which is present today in the world, which is upholding the sacred feminine, the right to worship the sacred feminine. These kind of possibilities are not there in Islam. These kind of possibilities are not there in Christianity. There's an old saying, a political saying, that we say that corruption starts from the top. But if corruption starts from the top, patriarchy also starts from the top. And this is something which feminists should realize. So if your God itself can only be male, then obviously it's going to be a very patriarchal setup all the way down. And I don't think you have Christian feminists who come to India and they lecture people, which is fair enough. I think we have a lot of things to improve even with regard to treatment of women. But these Christian feminists will not ever question their own theology. They will not confront the destruction of the sacred feminine under Christianity. And that's very unfortunate because I think that's a very major flaw in their theology. The lack of respect for the sacred feminine, the destruction of the sacred feminine. In fact, people talk about how the pagan religions were destroyed. Leave aside the question of pagan religions. Consider how the sacred feminine was destroyed the world over. It was destroyed in the Americas. The American Indians, they had their goddesses. The Aborigines in Australia, they had their goddesses. All those goddesses, all those gods, they were destroyed. Their temples were destroyed in the Americas, in Australia, in Europe, across the world. Today we only have Hinduism which is standing up. So I think feminists, when they come to lecture, they should also question their own theology. We just have, female bishops in Christianity in the past 20, 30 years. Maybe 5, 6 female bishops. And this year we had the first female black bishop. So what's happening? If they, even to get a female bishop, they have to wage a war. They have to, have so much of campaigning for the rights of women to be important in the religious hierarchy. But the point is, no matter how many female bishops you have, if your God itself can be only masculine, then you are losing a very beautiful, a very meaningful part of the sacred, that is the sacred feminine. So I think there was a Greek dramatist who wrote a play called Lysistrata. Lysistrata has the theme that if women were in charge, there would be less wars in the world. And I think that's an important point which he puts across. It's an interesting argument. We have a lot of wars in the world right now. Everywhere there are people killing each other, whether it's Syria, whether it's Afghanistan. And all these wars, maybe they could be reduced if we gave more importance to the female, the sacred feminine. So, because as the playwright says, if women were in charge, there would be greater tolerance, greater compassion, greater kindness. So, it's a shame. And I think we will go on to talk about the other strengths of Hinduism and also the weaknesses of Hinduism. But I think this is something the world can learn from Hinduism. This is something which Hinduism has there to teach the world. Because, everywhere else in the world they have suppressed and destroyed the sacred feminine. The poor American Indians, not only was there genocide, but all their worship of the sacred feminine was also destroyed. Now people talk, they say, oh, poor Aborigines, Aboriginal rights, there are UN conferences, international conferences. But what about the Aboriginal culture? What about their religion, their practices? So I speak not only as a Hindu, as far as this book is concerned, I speak as somebody urging respect and reverence for the sacred feminine in cultures and religions across the world. Because I think this is so meaningful. How can you even talk of gender equality? For example, in the United Nations recently, the Secretary General, he did something very good. All the senior people, the Under Secretary Generals, he decided that there are going to be good female representation, so a lot of them are female. But this is as far as jobs are concerned. What about divinity? How can we have a masculine divinity and not a feminine divinity? So it's not, it's a very primitive idea that God can only be a man. I think this is something which Hinduism has to offer. It's one of our great strengths. It doesn't mean, of course, that everything is okay in terms of gender equality in India. For example, you stop people from women to go and worship in some temples. That's absurd. That is anti-Hindu. Or there are some temples which menstruating women are not allowed to enter. That is also absurd. It's terrible. In a country where we worship the sacred feminine, where we have goddesses, to have this kind of discrimination is just terrible. It's not in consonance with our belief system.